Is Elise sitting out there?
Nope. Zoom, yeah.
Oh, she joined him via Zoom.
Elise has a herniated disc,
Oh,
so she's not moving.
Oh, there we are.
Okay,
ouch.
anyhow, she is not moving.
I should ask, is it easier for you guys if I keep the camera up, or if we just have the black screen?
She's gonna share
Black
her
screen's fine.
screen, so.
So, never mind, it's not gonna matter here in a minute.
I can't hardly see that ink.
It's for the best.
Right. All right, Blake, we good?
We're good, we're recording.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jeez. All right, approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, pose same sign. Motion carries. Discussion item is budget work revenue. Delise, you're up.
Hi. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling okay. Thanks for asking.
Good.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so, again, I just want to say that this is just an estimate. We'll know more here in the next month and a half or so solidly what our numbers are going to look like.
Can you blow that up a little bit, Delise?
Yes.
You'll have to scroll more, but I think that's about right.
Okay. So, these two numbers up here, this is our apportionment for this next year and what our levy amount will be. And these two numbers are based off of our enrollment projections for this next year. Same with these numbers right here. This is our special education money, which is based off of projected enrollment. Our LAP, bilingual, highly capable, our transportation operations. And this is not TVF, this is not depreciation, this is actual operational cost. Our CTE money, these are all based off of enrollment. Title I is also an estimate. These numbers down here, the suggestion of the ESD is to estimate it based off of what we received this year. It very rarely goes down, but the formula that they use to get the number, we just won't know more solidly until August. So it's better to underestimate than overestimate on the revenue side on these. And so these down here are operational. These are very much pass through. All of the funds that we get from TK all the way up to SPED can only be used on those programs and nothing else. We do get a small indirect revenue from these grants, but it's very, very small. This year, it's down to 2.63%. And where you can see the previous 2 fiscal years, it was higher. It was cut almost in half. So our revenue on the grants, unfortunately, is down. That leaves us with our apportionment up here, which is the big one, which is based on our enrollment. And we did budget conservatively, but that's what they do suggest, because what you don't want is to over budget and end up owing money to the state in the springtime next year. And
Elise,
so,
let's talk about that so that
Okay.
everybody understands that. So in the beginning, September, October, November, December, and generally January, we get based off of what we budget. Then either January or February, they balance. So then your following months, you kind of remember this when you first started, the following months, then they either start paying you extra because you under budgeted, or if you over budgeted, they start taking away. So we always want to under budget so that we get more revenue than what we projected than what we're doing. So we're over expensing and under revenue. Okay, thanks, Delise.
yes, that is correct. Okay, so the next one is our expenses. So, or let's go back over here, I'm sorry. So this leaves us with $32 million in revenue minus the pass-through. And when I say that, I mean these program dollars up here that we basically don't see anything from. So this is how much revenue we're going to have for this next year. And so this is where we get into the nitty-gritty. So this number up here are all of our salaries.
Will you blow that one up too, please?
Yes, sorry.
No, you're good.
This number up here is what the number will be, what we'll have to pay for all of the salaries out of basic ed. So this is all of our coaches, all of the overtime, all of our staff that aren't paid out of Title I, out of SPED or CT or anything like that. This right here is our MSOC dollar. So this is our material operating costs. We went over this a few weeks ago. This number also includes our running start costs, along with our ALE costs, our open doors costs, and our credit retrieval costs. So it is quite a bit higher. We did not include this in the MSOC presentation this last time because we were not discussing revenue, but the revenue that we receive from the FTE for these programs is included in the revenue that we get for apportionment. So we needed to discuss the cost of that today also. So basically where we're at right now with the revenue and with our salaries and MSOCs, we're at about a $700,000 deficit.
So
And
when
this
you,
number,
talk about the blue box there.
yeah, so this number right here includes the expenses for curriculum and technology as requested. So this does not include any of the carryover funds that we estimate having. We really won't know until the next month and a half or so and how much carryover we'll have, if any, and if we need to readjust. So we're trying to be as conservative as possible here. So that's what our deficit is. I've included some more numbers down here on what we possibly can cut. We obviously cannot cut any salaries. I mean, we're really down to the dime on that one. And everything else that we have budgeted for, we budgeted pretty conservatively also. So I've included a few figures here. This first one is without the technology items that our tech department is requesting. So this is the Chromebook replacement, the projector replacement. This is what the total MSOC would be without that. And that would be our deficit. This one right here is if we phased in the Chromebooks and their projector replacement. And this is if we did it a fourth at a time. So this would be our deficit then. Another option would be without curriculum. This is $350,000. And even without that, we're still at a $421,000 deficit. Without the technology and curriculum requests, without both of them, we are not in a deficit. And we do come out a little bit more comfortable at 197. And again, I just want to stress, these are just estimates, playing with numbers here on ideas of what we can do to write this.
So Delise, Jason and I are having a little sidebar conversation, which you can't see. Could you explain the PDF that you sent earlier about salaries? And it said total basic ed, 22,930, and today you're showing 25, I can't, 727.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
So the PDFs that you said sent after the meeting on salaries, it showed 33,656, and then you broke it apart, basic ed and total programs.
Yes.
Can you explain how you have 25,727 up here in salary, and on here under basic ed, you have 22,930?
Yes, so this number right here does not include this overtime pay, which is also an estimate. So I took this, what we're currently at in the previous year, and estimated a number for that. And this also did not include the coaches. So these two numbers right here just,
We can't see what you're pointing at.
oh, sorry, this basic ed number and total
No.
program number right here.
We're only seeing your Excel spreadsheet. You have to stop share and reshare,
Oh, it's another,
or it froze, one or the other.
no, it's another spreadsheet. Hold on.
Yeah, you change.
Oh.
Stop share and start sharing.
Technology,
Yeah,
can only share
it's-
one screen at a
There you
time.
go. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just gabbing over here about something you can't see. So this number right here, this $23 million number, does not include this overtime pay or the coaches pay. So this just included, these two just equaled this. Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a little bit different, but yes.
Okay. Yeah, so the number on this other spreadsheet is higher.
Okay.
Because
Thank
this
you.
will all come out of basic ed levy money. And then this is, I mean, the amount of actual program dollars that subbing actually costs is very little. So we just budgeted all of that in basic ed. Okay. All right, so I have a little note down here that Kim wanted to talk about AOE and our Open Doors program.
So today, about 3:30 or 4 o'clock, Delise calls me and says, because this difference number than the top cell, we were like less than 100,000, and I was like really excited. And she sends me an email and says, oh, but the revenue shows the FTE and the money for our re-engagement students and our open doors, but we didn't have the expenses in there for that. So basically, our open door student, that's a student that's a dropout prevention. Now, we're not talking our highly capable open doors. We're talking open door re-engagement. Costs us that, our running start, well, and I'm going to use really round numbers here. Open door costs us approximately $265. Running Start costs us about $280. And our ALE was like 117 or 112.
What's ALE?
That's
Alternative
learning, and
environment,
so like
like online kids.
online kids. That together is about $675,000. So if you see that, we were just under 100,000 in that negative difference before we added that expense in. And we know that the Running Start's not going away. We know that we're gonna have to offer an online option. And if anybody else is listening, I don't know if anyone is tonight or those that this is being recorded and will be posted. I'm not saying we stop the open door program. It is needed for re-engagement, those who have dropped out and come back or whatever. But I'm wondering, and Deanna and I, and every superintendent, every team always talks about this. Is there something we're missing in keeping those students engaged with us? And often the answer is no, but sometimes there is. And so I'm looking at that number going, okay, if we're spending $265,000 going out, could we pay a teacher, and let's just say that teacher costs us salaries and everything $100,000, and do a re-engagement program inside our district and be 165 ahead? And maybe that open door re-engagement program that we create and manage, right, is evenings, is weekends, is something. But would we be doing the community of Prosser something good? Would we be doing our students, having them have an option? And what other options do we have? And so I don't have an answer tonight for you. I'm just sharing with you that 675,000, like I said, the 265, 270 that goes out to Running Start. Our college and the high school is going up. We are predicting that number will go down, but we can't bet on the come that that number will drastically go down. Where we may see it go down is if we could compare those going into the 11th grade this year, see if the 11th grade or year one of Running Start is less. Because those in seniors are already in Running Start this year, so they're not gonna stop Running Start. But are we having fewer start Running Start, right, Deanna? Oh, she's looking right now. So what I'm trying to say is, what can we do proactively to help keep the students here? Even if it cost us some money, could we save $100,000 or $150,000 by doing something proactive like that? Now, that doesn't solve this, and we're not gonna do a final budget. We might do a tentative adoption. Delise is really nervous about doing our final budget until August, till we really have all the formulas, which is fine with me. But we want this community and you as a board and those people who are listening or going to listen future, that we're really trying to be proactive in our budget. Deanna and those who are into the curriculum piece, and then Sean with the technology piece, and we talked a lot about computers, we kind of have to make some decisions on that, even though the budget may not be finalized, because we have to figure out what's next. And the science curriculum, it's not a September purchase, it's a next spring purchase. So we've got some pieces there also. I want to tell you all of my thinking now. If our enrollment continues to go up, is one. If our Running Start costs go down, right? There's some things that can allow that decision of curriculum to happen. We still have to budget for it, but we could say that 771,000 based on what's going on in our out of students leaving the district, right? The pass-through has gone down. Our enrollment is up. So we're gonna pull the plug on buying the curriculum, let's just say. Or we're not, based on what's happens throughout the year. We can build it in the budget, knowing that we can't go that far. the other thing with the technology and some of these numbers that you see, what if we do a quarter of the technology for the fall? And if we're successful, we could say we'll do another quarter in the spring. I think that's what we need to talk about tonight. Like what, we know that we can't go back $771,000. We know that. We're not even asking to do that, but now we're asking like, what do we plan for? What is acceptable? And then if our enrollment does go up and things go our way, which ones are we, does Delise need to build in? So we have the spending capacity so that we don't have to modify the budget in January, February, March. How did I do, Delise?
Perfect.
Okay, so slide down so we can see those 4 basic ed boxes and let them start asking questions.
Refresh me on the text. So she was looking to replace half this year. Is that correct?
No, I think a half, because one of our options was to see
The
the
quarter.
quarter technology. Was that a quarter of what she asked for or a quarter of the total?
A quarter of what she asked for.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, because I think she's trying to do either 4 or 5 years for rotation. Chromebooks have about a
text her and make sure.
5-year life.
Oh.
That's fine.
Should be,
Yeah,
should
quarter.
be a 5-year.
Okay,
So, but
And
she
the
said,
other
can she try to
school.
stretch some certain things out and do 6 years to try to make certain ones last? I mean, they have a life.
We,
That Chromebooks are Blake's world.
she's trying, and please, Sean, if you listen to this, please excuse me if I get anything wrong. I understand, but we do have an absolute drop dead date when we have to replace everything in there. Chromebooks have an expiration date when Google stops updating them, and as a school with our cybersecurity, we have to have them all updated at all times. So the vast majority of ours got an extension, so they all must be replaced by at the latest 2029, which gives us an additional 5 years from now. But what she's trying to avoid is getting up to 2028 and saying, okay, now we need to replace 2,500 Chromebooks.
Mhm.
When we could get, if we can get on a 5-year replacement plan.
Yeah.
Then, that would basically mean that now we can get ahead of it. And so now we only have to replace 20% of our Chromebooks every year instead of 100%, which is 500 a year, I believe, is
Mhm.
20%.
Yep.
So.
And then, so on the revenue side for the budget, what was our district number that we used for that budget?
you want to go back there, right there.
For technology.
No, just for, on the revenue side, like when we budget with the state,
32, right there. 32,160 is our basic.
like how many
Yes.
kids is that, is what I'm asking.
Oh, but
Oh,
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, that's all right.
October's, let me pull that up. I actually have enrollment up right now.
So we used October.
Okay.
Because we've grown since October, but we used October plus 18 for the new class of TK. So we're adding a whole new TCLAD class that we've never had before. So we use October plus 18. So after, you'll have to stop sharing then reshare, but
2365.
Yep.
So these numbers are calculated, so these two numbers, this is calculated from OSPI. So they take, our levy information, our assessed value, and they project out what we'll receive. This is based on our enrollment projection of the 2365. So is this special education number, all of these except for Title I, Deanna gets this number. But these are all projected off of our enrollment and our CTE enrollment, our SPED enrollment, and what we're projected to have for things like TK.
so will you scroll down? Tell me why 23 plus 5, I showed that's a 28.9. And you have in green 32-1. Is that because of,
So these include, food services and transportation.
thank you.
You're welcome.
She's got the formula there. She could try.
Hey, Delise, does,
Yes.
does the levy amount, does that include the match? Isn't the state give you a match?
Yes. Yep,
Okay.
that includes both.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Have we looked through? I'm sure you have, but a couple things like the salaries, is there no wiggle room at all in there?
You know, our salaries, they're all basically bargained. I mean, and we're doing the bare minimum now. Obviously coaches is a big one. Our subs is a big one. You know, we have that roving sub cost in there if we can cut that back. Overtime is a big one. You know, we spend about $225,000 in overtime and extra time. So that's something that we can look at. You know, little things can make a dent.
On the overtime or extra time, how much of that, like, can you define like what that might be or how that is?
Code effects.
Yeah, like what bargaining
So
group, I guess that would affect.
a few. So PSE is a big one. All of our drivers, they all work extra hours and also get into overtime. So, and that includes sports trips, extra trips. We have a really, really hard time with sub bus drivers. And so our drivers and our other PSE staff are pulled. We actually have a lot of staff that work in transportation and food service at the same time. And go back and forth doing that. So that's a big one. Our secretaries and our admin assistants are big on the overtime, extra hours. Food services is a big one because, you know, again, we're splitting them with transportation and food. And so by the time they get to their food services shift, they've already worked, you know, a 5.5 hour transportation shift. And, you know, a food service person called out. And so they have to do their cleaning duties. It's been pretty tough with our subbing situation in our food service and transportation department.
Let me expand on that a little bit.
Mhm.
There was, and Deanna will have to give the historical knowledge. I always lean to her for the historical knowledge. At some point, it was hard to find someone to work for food service for 4 hours. And it was hard to find someone to work in busing for 5 hours. Neither one is really a survivable wage, right? And so it was a way to support our staff. If you wanted to run your bus in the morning, go do lunch, run your bus in the afternoon, it made for give or take an 8-hour day. And this is where the problem is. Some of those employees now are senior, you know, as far as seniority. So now they work, let's just say, they never work an overtime of an hour of 8-hour shift. But now they're the senior bus driver and now they're gonna do 2 sporting trips. So their 40-hour week now turns into a 60-hour week. They run a Friday night and a Saturday. But they get first preference at the trips. So that's an example of where the busing, and I shouldn't say busing. So that's an example where union contracts, which are our friends a lot of times, but they do get seniority. And so you have to go down the list. You want the trip? Nope. You want the trip? No. Right. And if you were just a bus driver, you still might get a little overtime, but you're not going to get 20 hours of overtime.
Yeah, also, like other things that cause overtime. Well, sometimes there's things that happen and it's gonna happen. And overtime is also extra time. So if a person works 36 hours and they work, so I think, is that correct, Delise? That time is overtime and extra time, right?
Yep, so it's anything above and beyond their contracted hours.
Because you also have, like, if you come here on a basketball game night, there's a custodian here. Well, they already work 40 hours a week, but they're here because we have, you know, 700 or 800 people here. So those things happen. There are some things happening with negotiations, I think with sub situation that we'll be able to share soon that I think will help some with our bottom line. And then I just pulled up so we had at one point 120 kids in Running Start and then it had dropped down back to about 60. Right now there's 37 requesting Running Start for next year. As they're doing, they can do their.
Yeah,
PA.
in the high school.
So
So that'll help that number.
Yeah,
That's,
Do you know what that is about per student?
say that again.
What's the cost Running Start per
Pretty much
student?
everything that we get for them.
so
Minus
if
the
we,
whole
if we divided 265 by 60. I can do
It's
that.
roughly a pass-through of what they get through the apportionment.
It is.
It
all-
just kind of
so
runs
if we
right
get
through.
Say we get
CBC.
$10,000 a student, 9,700 of it's gonna go to CBC.
Yeah.
They stay here, other than a handful of courses we might have to have through Running Start, but even at that, we don't pay for, we will pay a little bit for those, not a lot. And all of our college and the high school is now paid for by the state. The only thing we pay is if we need to do materials training, my department pays for those things. But 23 kids not going to Running Start. when
That's
we have
$230,000.
Yeah.
Or, did I say?
90.
a lot.
It's a lot.
So that could help.
Yes.
I mean, if you can
So-
find 50 here and 10
Yeah.
there, and I mean, you can get
Well,
to your
and that's why
700,
I-
right?
That's why I said, I'm very, very conservative. I'm not saying we want to plan $715,000 to the negative. And we would never approve those purchase orders and never do that, right? But do we need to really see how it shakes out in the Running Start enrollment? And do we need to really see how it works? I just don't know the answer. I really don't know the
I'm sure
answer.
Delise is budgeted for Running Start on what our
Yeah.
historical numbers are, which is about 60.
Okay,
And that is that would be a big difference if that pans out. Now, obviously, high school's not done with scheduling, but normally all those requests would already be in, and usually it's about 60 kids.
okay.
So that's positive.
What about in the MSOC budget? I think this gap is like 10% of that whole budget. So is every single line item in there really high priority, or is there some
Well, the biggest
ranking
one
within
that's
each
hurting
department?
us, the biggest one that's hurting is the $260,000
$60,000
increase in our insurance. So if you took that 260 out of that 700 number, right? Do you see where I'm coming from? We have some big expenses that really jacked up, even though our MSOC budget is actually less. If you took that 260 out, we've actually reduced our MSOC expenditures preparing for that. Is that right, Delise?
Correct, yep.
Hey, Delise, is there, I know we talked about it at the last meeting, but we thought about building in a curriculum and a technology, kind of like a reserve fund where it's just designed to go to those two things? How much out of this budget goes into those two items?
Well, nothing yet. That's something else that we can discuss and we can decide however much we want to. My only suggestion in this is whatever, you all decide, we do need to budget the expenses over, so budgeting for curriculum, even if we don't think we're going to have the money for it, because we could have the money for it if we are conservative in other areas of our spending and if we find grants. The last thing we want to do is have to do a budget extension in April or May if we find that we are going to be able to afford it.
And I know for science, so we've budgeted an amount to pay for the science adoption, but I've been in discussions with Angie Shreve
Yep.
for the last 2 years. And
She's
potentially
offered
we could get a pretty
big portion
healthy
of that.
grant from Battelle to
PPNL
help
or
pay
Battelle.
PPNL to pay for part of it at least.
If
like-
not a big portion.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously not guaranteed, but it's a possibility.
When do you apply
So-
for that?
Well, we just got another $10,000 from them. They do like a smaller grant. We got 10,000 last year. Another one just came. They never sent us like, I don't think any notification, a check just showed up, which is not a terrible problem to have, but Lori was like, why did I get this check? So it's a little bit different, you know, it's probably a springtime.
Or
thing
we
is when their
could go
giving
to-
Cycle is.
Yep, and we could go to them and present and show the whole thing when they're working on their budget.
Yeah.
And we could say, this is how much our curriculum is for science, and here's the curriculum we're looking for.
And maybe.
How could you help us?
Yeah.
And they might give us 10,000, but they might give us,
But we need a
90%.
number before.
But
so
yeah,
they
we
can
don't-
Actually pick something before we get to that, but I mean, Angie's been super supportive and communicates really well with me when there's opportunities, so.
at Rotary, when she was there the last time, she said, you guys have got to prepare a proposal and ask.
That's kind of what it is like.
So what are we doing to proactively like look into all the grants we could possibly get? And have we considered hiring someone to write grants for us?
I talked about
We've
it.
talked about that since I've been here.
Yeah, grant writing in and of itself, if you're doing, so most of the competitive grants that are like ones that come through like our state system, they're not super onerous. Like if you were doing like a federal grant, or you doing, you know,
Like our Gear Up grant, which we don't write there.
that's very onerous grant writing. It is not something we have the capacity to do, obviously. So, a lot, but so the ones that we end up getting, a lot are small, 25,000, 10,000. Still worthwhile to do it and get the money and have the opportunity. We have outdoor learning grant. We'll be doing some camp stuff next year. So, but it's not big money. So, we wouldn't have the time. We would have to probably hire someone if we're doing something really big.
And I'm gonna be very transparent when I say, I don't know. So like, because I'm selling my house, right? So the realtor makes money when she sells my house.
Mhm.
But I don't know, does a grant writer get paid on the grant you receive? Or do you pay a flat fee for writing it based on the amount that you're asking for? I don't even know how that works. So it works great if it's based on a percentage of what you receive. But if you're paying and if you don't get any grants and then you're paying it, then it's not to your advantage. So I don't know how it works. I'm being very transparent when I say that.
Is there a district that that uses one that we could ask?
I don't know.
Probably not our size, our area, really big district, maybe.
You might be able
Ask
to
those.
talk to the city and see who they use as a grant
So
writer.
right now, we're working with the ESD's grant writer for our preschool project.
We could ask.
I've
maybe.
worked with a hospital grant writer before when we were doing some health stuff. So, I mean, it's always a possibility if something's worth the money, worth the try.
I would
At
be
least
a
we
little
could
bit of a
ask
gamble.
does
We
it
can
cost
ask her.
money
Yeah.
just for them to write it, or do they get a percentage of the take?
No, I think you pay it.
This is a suggestion I hear a lot, that Pullman School District is very, very close to our size, our numbers and all this. Might ask if they have if anyone there has a grant writer.
Well, I do think that somehow we need to start a reserve fund for curriculum and technology. Whether it's $10,000 this year, if we can manage it or not, but I think if we could, set that line item up, we can always push in more as more gets done, but I'm just afraid if we
Yeah,
don't do anything, then we're
agree.
gonna have the same conversation
Every
every
year.
single year.
mhm.
And not that we'll have enough money, in 5 years to pay for some, but who knows? I mean,
Yeah.
you might have a good budget one year and we can knock in 500,000 to each of them. Who knows? I mean,
So Delicia, I might ask, our policy, and because our, revenue is going up, our expenses, what number is our reserve? What's the dollar amount that a reserve has to be?
Well, it's up to our discretion, but historically it's been 650,000. So I did talk to Travis about this the other day. Travis
That
is,
doesn't sound right, Delise.
our budget capacity, our reserve.
No, the
reserve
fund
is-
balance.
The fund balance is 5%,
Oh, I think it's 5%. Yes, I'm sorry.
2.1
So
approximately.
I'll have to check the policy.
I think it's 5.
I think it's 5. The policy is hanging in my office.
Range, isn't it between 4 to 6? Like,
Let me see.
What's the bottom line on our budget right now?
Oh,
I think you shot for 5, but not less than.
42, 40,
We should know all of them by heart, right? 5 sticks in my head. I don't know what.
it is that, I'm sure, certain. So I think, yeah, 2.25.
And we're predicting almost 0, maybe 100,000 carryover, right?
Yes, let me get that carryover.
And I know we're still 3 months out really, but I think we kind of
That's
have,
Yeah, so we're estimating a couple $100,000 carryover. Conservatively, so hopefully we can keep that status quo.
On the transportation operations budget, does that include all trips? Doesn't athletics cover, the athletics department cover bus driver costs and buses for the sports trips? Or is that included in this? Is that a separate line item?
That would be in the athletics part.
Okay.
The lease is the cost for athletics for transportation in the athletics part, or is it in the transportation part?
In the expenses, it would be in the athletics part. This revenue piece, the mileage, and so transportation gets paid off of a piece of their mileage. And I do believe that includes the sports trips. This is where that piece of revenue comes in.
looking at our file, we talked about the MSOC budget, and it says the total was 5.76. I think I wrote down 7.2 on this.
Yep, so the MSOC budget that we talked about did not include any of the running starts or the ALE
That's
or the
correct.
open course amounts.
no, that's why we sit here.
Got it.
That's okay. It's a lot.
It seems like small dollars as I flip through all of these tabs for everybody's individual budgets. But have we thought about like taking a small 10% reduction from all of the discretionary type items in the building budgets and in the department budgets? Things like supplies, example.
Yep.
Like
That's why
I
we-
definitely would rather pay for a curriculum and technology than, I don't know, pens and paper clips. I don't know what they buy, but that's usually the first thing we cut. Supplies.
Elise, can you scroll down to the bottom number, please? The total. Thank you.
I know it's probably hard to tell what kind of cuts you can make when you don't have good history about what you really need to compare it to.
In the past, there's been times we've done like a 10%, for instance, like hold back on building budgets, like a 10% hold back in case enrollment doesn't come in, and then if it does, so for instance, say your building budget's 70,000, we're gonna hold 7,000. And then if it comes in, if you come in with higher, then we'll give you that back. So we've done things like that with budgets before. There's a lot of different strategies you could use, but there's certain places it's like, I mean, some of it's so nickel and dimey to get it to where you can like say $5,000 sounds like a lot, but it's very hard to pin down what you can get to save the $5,000 other than just taking something. Like we're gonna cut X or we're gonna cut Y. For me, for like program staff and stuff, there's still, you know, we have some resignations that there still may be some changes before the year starts. I have my preliminary allocations, but the grants aren't actually out yet. Those won't probably come out till July. Some of the stuff, you know, we talked about with subs, there's some options. We've talked about some options with overtime to try to limit some of that, but some of it's like can't stop, like we can't, the bus driver stuff, like you can't stop it. So it's a short of canceling kid programs, the only way to stop it.
So I did pull up policy 6022. It does say 5%. And it says if you balance funds drops below 4%, a financial emergency will be declared. So what we want to do is always stay in the 5% range. And it does sometimes go 5.5 and 6 and then 4.9 and you know what I mean? Because it fluctuates every month, but our goal is never to drop below 5% in a fiscal analysis. That's policy 6022.
6022 60.
6022.
And right now we're at that 5%.
Yeah, we're a little bit over. Not much, but. Some other things that sometimes come up, so I ask Elise all the time, and she says, well, let me call and ask, doesn't hurt to ask. So let's say we sell the building we're in down there. That still is only capital money. Now, we could borrow from that, but then you have to pay it back to the capital fund with interest. So it's, even though it's yours, it can't be used for a and believe it or not, a Chromebook is considered a disposable item. So, you know, if you're putting in a cell tower or something, maybe not, but a Chromebook is a disposable item.
Who sets the interest rate that you borrow that?
I think there's some rules. I don't know who sets it, but there are some rules that we have to follow. So in other words, it couldn't be used to help permanently fix some
Yeah.
problems. So what we kind of need today, and we're not gonna solve this today necessarily, but if you could go to that expenses tab, Delise. Do you have a vision of what your gut says that you'd like us to? I guess how deep do we want to plan for? Let me restate that. Plan for, right? Knowing that it could be better. Do we want to plan for the whole thing, knowing that there's very strict, we're doing a quarter of the technology to start the year, and we'll decide curriculum in March when we see enrollment? Do we want to start with none of it, but then we'd have to do a budget amendment? We need to kind of know where you want us to head. Now there's gonna be a full budget presentation, there's a resolution, there's all things that still go on, but we kind of need to know, right? We need to kind of know where you think you'd like to see us working towards.
I mean, I would obviously like to be able to do it all, curriculum and whatever Sean was wanting to do. I guess my backing it up from there, my thought would be to talk to Sean on the Chromebook and seeing about getting on, whether it's a 5-year plan or whatever, however that looked. And then leaving the curriculum in there in case there was the money, so you don't have to do the budget. Redo the budget later on. I guess that's my initial thought anyway. Cause we just don't want to get to that point in 2029 and
$2 million worth of computers.
sitting with a big old turd on your desk and it doesn't work. So I guess that's my initial thought.
Still, like I said, there's still some things we're working on. I think that number is gonna come down.
And if
Or
we-
go up, I guess. I don't know, up, down.
Right.
less
get
negative.
better, get better.
Yeah.
Improve.
The other thing is if we do have a decent carryover, that 771 could become a,
Potentially 670,
Yeah.
650. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I hate seeing a big, large red number. That's pretty tough to look at.
Mhm.
We already had one of those, this year, unfortunately. I think I would plan, my preference would be to plan for both, curriculum and the computers, but, if something falls short, then, we're gonna have to cut.
say no.
Yeah, and say no. I did have a thought, depending on how the budget plays out through August. If our minimum fund balance to stay at 5% is 2.245 million. For this next year, we roughly have about $280,000 of leeway before we go below 5%. I would like to see, and it's just a thought, but I would like to see maybe some of those dollars go into a reserve fund.
Maybe
For
that's
both
where,
curriculum and
That
technology.
carryover.
maybe that's where the carryover goes.
I don't, it'd be pretty tough to use it all, but if we did 50,000 in each fund to get it kickstarted,
Mhm.
then wherever the chips fall, then we can just start divvying money, more into that. So 2 years from now, we can, maybe not be in such a weird quandary on technology and curriculum.
Curriculum.
So that would be my 2
Yeah,
cents.
and then I think if you specify those as almost being more like needs, you might find other money, or other ways to raise money to
Mhm.
meet those needs. Cause that's something you don't wanna fall behind on, but we are trying to straighten out a budget here.
So I think I hear too that the search, we can talk to the woman who's helping with this, with the ELF grant. And we can ask the questions about grant, find, writers and how we solicit and or find, right?
And technology and curriculum and things like that is where you wanna spend that kind of money versus people. If you can get it.
Is there any limitations on private grants, or is it like for?
As long as we can comply with their requirements.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, cause they're
sometimes.
the ones that set the parameters for.
Yeah, exactly. So I had a teacher ask about a grant, that integrates movement and learning, but they have a specific amount of time you have to spend doing a certain thing every day, and we don't have that time to do. Our blocks are 45 minutes, not 60 minutes, so really we can't quote. So it's like, you just have, but if you're looking for the other option, it's, makes it complicated and Delise probably won't like it that I'm saying this, but you can also look at the idea that like if you say select something like Chromebooks, or maybe it's a curriculum, and I can come up with $110,000 this year, and I can get 110, I can order that like first thing in September and use last year's money and this year's money. And we won't have the curriculum right at the beginning of the year, which is a problem, but it can still be done. Same thing with the technology. Can the Chromebooks last? Like, can we get $100,000 in there and she gets what she can and another 100, right? So you buy them at the end of this year, beginning of next year. So as you try to build that back up and correct the budget, there's a little bit you can do with the end of the year, beginning of the year. There was years ago, the state in their wisdom, they saved millions of dollars by moving a date from the last day of the end of the fiscal year to the first day of the next one. And we saved money. We didn't give you your apportionment on the 31st. We gave it to you on the 1st. Well, they didn't really save money, but on paper, they can kind of look at it that way too. I need $220,000 for science, but if I can get have 110 that I have in August, that was from this year, and you're gonna be able to give me that next year, like you can do some of that, like, it's not ideal, but you can, like, maybe there's, parts that we can buy now and parts we can get once school started. There's things like that.
And then do a full rollout in
Yeah.
January.
Like ARC
rather
would have
than-
totally worked that way because, we use ESSER money, but ARC has multiple units that come throughout the year. We could have bought the first ones and then you get into the school year and then you can pay for the rest of them. So it just depends on what it is, and how we can, is it a matter of we're only gonna have, like, maybe we're gonna buy a class set of textbooks, but maybe we we buy the online licenses and we can't buy the textbooks till September and then they'll come in after. So there's ways to.
We also,
In a cap.
one of the things that we're talking about was, like, right now you buy 50 textbooks. And, they check out the library or whatever. Maybe we could go to 25 textbooks.
Yeah, do you really need a class set? No, you might need 10 in a class. So there's things that are workable. We can buy licenses. We have to be careful about that because of kids and access. Not everybody has internet or good internet. And so we're working with a student right now who doesn't have internet that needs some support over the summer. They don't have internet. So is there some things we can do, just to get from August 31st to September 1st? Put in the order in beginning of August, it's gonna come and we're gonna have to pay it in September. Might not be here right at the beginning of school, but we make it work.
Maybe another couple comments. I kind of like Michelle's idea of seeing in the MSOC if you can knock off, 5 or 10%. But can we also look at overtime and just minimize, if it's needed, it's needed. I get it, but if you're spending an extra hour a day doing something you could do the next day, then, maybe we drop the overtime number a little bit and we just can't.
One of the
We
things,
just
There
can't do
definitely
it.
is some
so one of the things we talked about was, I'm just gonna use a building secretary asking for overtime. I'll just use that real generic. So if anybody's listening, I'm not talking about your building or your job. But if the building principal wants to approve that, then it comes out of their building budget.
Yeah, if a kid's missing,
That's not what we're talking
that's
about.
not the same.
Right,
What
but
it's
if you
like-
want all your filing done
Certain
and
projects
something's
done
done
or
or
whatever.
something, then,
You wanna pay
then
them
it
2
comes
extra
out of what
hours.
we've allocated for your building budget rather than out of HR's overtime. Because right now, it's all payroll related, and so,
Right now, what happens is they do it and then we have to pay them. Whereas instead of, like, say for instance, it's our maintenance department, you get $30,000 of overtime and you decide how to use it.
right, rather than we just
So a
plug the
budget
timesheet.
for overtime versus,
Mhm.
we could, I'm sure, run a report and figure out where all the overtime's coming
Yeah,
from. We know the things like the buses and the trips is maybe almost an impossible problem.
Mhm.
But are we paying a lot of overtime in food service? Are we paying a lot of overtime for custodians? It's not related to student activities. What's happening? It's just something that just needs to be kind of dug into. I do think even though sub costs are expensive, we have a whole bunch of new substitutes coming in. So
We have
some of
like
these-
20 in the last 2 weeks.
because there's people that are losing their jobs and there aren't jobs. And so we have lots of teachers that in our sub pool that get to benefits, and that's a cost. If you have more people in your pool, that's
And you could
not gonna happen
not
as much.
gonna
So,
happen as much.
can we predict it? No. Can we predict how many long-term subs are gonna have for people, like bird, babies, whatever? Probably not. It'll still happen. But there's some ways to, those are big expense areas. There's
Big
some ways
expense
to-
areas.
Yeah, the insurance thing is just a killer.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And that's probably not gonna get better.
No,
No.
it's not, but then the state also needs to recognize that because that came out, oh, guess what, you're gonna get a 30, 40 or 50% increase. That came out, what, a month ago?
Yeah.
After
2
the
weeks ago,
legislative
yeah.
session
After
was
it's already
over.
done, and then what? Like, and you, basically, you have no choice. Yeah, you have to pay for power at your house if you
Yep.
want to have, thick.
I have a question on long-term subs.
Yeah.
If somebody needs a long-term sub, are we paying both the full salary of the person that needs
If
it.
they have
and-
leave,
If they have leave.
if they have sick leave, personal leave, we don't pay PFM, like family medical leave, or unless they use their sick leave. They use PFMLA, then that's paid by the state. But if they have sick leave, then yeah, we're paying both people. So we could be paying a 12-year teacher at the top of the salary schedule, and you could bring in a sub that might be there too, a retired teacher, and you're paying double. Because we pay per diem if we know they're gonna go over 20 days. Because they're doing long plans and stuff. I mean, they should get paid that. That's fair. But that's expensive.
Delise, have I missed any conversations that you think we should have had that we haven't had yet?
No, I don't think so. It's pretty spot on. I think that we need to budget for these things regardless. It's my opinion.
So can I say that back to you?
Mm-hmm.
So if you slide that screen up, you think that we should budget for that, even though we're gonna say potentially no if we can't find grants or other revenue sources?
I think that we should budget at least for partial of the technology, and for curriculum, yes.
So then
Um,
slide down, you're saying that we should budget, go
This one
down,
right here, the 307, negative
the
307.
negative 307?
yes,
And if that runs
that's my opinion.
accurate, that's, most of that.
Less.
What did we say, 230,000?
Yeah,
Would be the
something like that.
difference, so then another 70.
And
Multiply.
a lot of that could be solved with our running start that we've talked about. Could be solved by getting some grants for some of the curriculum. Reducing credit retrieval costs.
We spend a lot on credit retrieval.
Yes,
Well, what last month was 50.
and that goes back to improving instruction, early intervention, not getting to 30 absences before we have the parents in. There's lots and lots of pieces that happens.
Grading policy.
Grading policies. And remember, a
Our
lot of times,
enrollment is tripled in 14-18. I think Kim and I were looking at it earlier, and last year, February of 2023, we had 11 students, and this year we had 41
Those are kids who are going.
in open door.
open doors.
Is that one's not open doors? Is that, oh, that is. open.
14-18, yeah.
14,
Well, the
18.
reality of that is too, though, those are kids that are on the verge of dropping out. So maybe we're just retrieving more kids that would have been dropping out. Doesn't mean it's not expensive, but I think our credit retrieval period, our regular credit retrieval is costing us a ton.
So that's red comment and red.
Red comment in past, but it's just gonna be red comment this
And
coming.
so
That was up
something,
55,000 last month.
Is that the 265,000 you're talking about? For reengagement?
and so one of the examples is if we, and you've heard me at different times say this, if we know that if you fail, I'm just gonna pretend English 9A, and then you start 9B's trimester 2, you're also gonna go take 9A again right now. In school, in class, not through credit retrieval. And you're not gonna get an extra PE class, you're gonna go take the class again. And as soon as that is known, you have way less kids failing because they don't wanna go sit through that class again. They're gonna do their homework and take it do it right the first time.
Some districts also make families pay for credit retrieval.
Yep. And I don't, yeah, that's a big one and that's a very controversial, but if you fail
Well-
the class and your family pays the credit retrieval fee for the class.
Part of going to this trimester format though, is like, how many classes can you fail now and still graduate?
Almost a trimester's worth,
There's
right?
an opportunity.
So I mean, it's not like they don't have the opportunity with the trimester format. So I mean,
Do have-
at some point in time, you've had plenty of opportunities. Now, I'm sorry to say that, but
Ultimately,
you're
we have
exactly
to
right.
fix
I
the
mean-
problem. The problem needs to be fixed. The problem of the failures need to be fixed, not the fixing of the, like going back and putting the Band-Aid on after you have to already have the wound. So,
Let's
Yeah.
not have the wound to begin with.
yes,
Yeah.
you're gonna have some.
yeah, no, yeah. I understand.
If you have an understanding, right, that every time you go take your driver's test, you're gonna pay the fee again?
Yeah.
That's a bad example, but it's a decent example. If you, those often kids pass their drivers the first time, and if they don't, they really need some remediation because they need some help passing. So my idea here is you only need an English 9A and 9B, and third trimester, right, is makeup of A or makeup of B if you failed one of them. Because you're not gonna take English 10 until you've passed English 9, and we have the courses enough to do that and not do the red comment.
Mhm.
And that's also how you increase enrollment in your upper level classes, because they're passing those freshman classes on time, so now they're ready to take.
So how does it work right now? So you fail freshman 9A, you can automatically go into red comment?
No.
Nope,
Okay, what happens?
they try and build those classes back in.
Yeah.
But
And
it-
they really try not to do math in red comment. It's really hard, it's really hard for a kid not to do math with a person, with a teacher. But there's a lot of history.
Science,
With PE,
Oh.
believe it or not.
Do we need red?
PE, should say PE, failing of PE.
Yeah.
Well, how do you fail PE if we have aerobic walking as a class?
You don't.
Probably
dress down.
don't show.
Don't show.
Don't show or don't dress down.
Well, I mean, I think that's getting to your point, you know, Brian, and what you were talking about, Lisa, is at some point, you know, it's on you and whether they have to pay for it or.
I feel like just in general, we've gotten away from accountability the last 3-4 years. It's to that point where it's just. I'm to the point where like enough is enough, like parents gotta get involved, kids gotta be accountable. You're in this trimester format. You can still flunk classes and still graduate. So I mean,
We had, was it maybe it was 2 years ago, and Clark Alford came and talked about at the time when we went to the trimester system and the basis for it, and it was to build in that time, and you really have, you know, that credit, you have like an entire trimester to make that up. So I like this idea that, okay, when first you're gonna go take your class again, and then how many times can we put them back in the class before we say, okay, red comment once, and after that, you pay for it? Or maybe
I
does he
wasn't a
pay
high
for
school
it?
principal, Kim was, but I think that if sometimes I think they see, and I'm not saying the red comment classes are easy, because I don't think they are. But for some kids, it's like, it's okay, I'll be able to do red comment, and then, so.
You do it at home.
Like, right, like
Yeah.
if you have to do, like you're in the class, you're doing you have to do the class over, like pass the class the first time. But there's more pieces to it that maybe we.
There
get
are
in.
other pieces
There
to
are
it,
other pieces that are not,
but I
that
think
need to
if
be addressed.
if I had students that had me as, when I was a principal, that are now graduating this year, and they knew that Miss Casey was gonna make them take, I don't think we had 4 kids fail freshman English. Because nobody, to all the teachers who are listening, nobody wanted to take those English classes ever again, right? They wanted to go take it, and those who did really struggled for other reasons.
yes,
But we also had after-school tutoring. So we had tutoring available. We had a very open but yet strict grading policy. Right? Everybody graded the same. We graded from standard. We didn't have standards-based grade books, but we graded on standards and meeting standard. And so there's just many pieces to that, but that's not an overnight fix. And it really is a mentality and accountability piece, right? You can beg all you want, but you failed English 9A, you could, but you had to take it again. And so
Do
once
we
they-
move kids forward right now? If they fail, they still go to the next class?
Mhm. That is,
Oh, I didn't realize that.
yeah,
That blows my mind, honestly.
well, but if you, I'm just sharing with you, a lot of students don't fail because they're not, they're capable of doing the 10th grade work when they do it. We can't keep them always in 9th grade. Now they only have 9th grade credits, but they still become a 10th grader. Their graduation year stays with them since kindergarten. So they still are the class of 2027. Regardless of how many credits they have, they still have to make up past work, but it's still a class of 2027. So then we put them in 10th grade and they have to make up their 9th grade work. And if they go to 11th grade and they do their 11th grade work and whatever they have to accomplish.
And
We
if
also
they don't,
Need our freshmen passing their classes. When
Yes.
Freshmen pass their classes.
9th grade
they go
success rate
on,
you talk about, you hear
They
us
go
talk
on
about
and
that?
they pass, like, once they figure it out as freshmen and they get the support that they need and they pass their classes as freshmen, they're much more likely to go on and sophomores usually and be successful.
And the
But they
numbers.
have to have a
way down.
good start.
Is it possible to restructure the red comment and their credit retrieval before school starts in August? To talk, like, okay, you're gonna retake the class. Can you retake it twice after you fail it before you go to
I
red
wouldn't
comment?
put somebody back in this class. I would put it back in one time, but I wouldn't put it back in a second. time.
And then we say, and then you're paying for it, 'cause I'm guessing, and this is just a big speculation, but like, the rumor is, it's gotta be like, okay, you flunk it, you gotta go take it online. How easy is that? You can do it from home, or you come in and do it, you don't have to dress down for PE. This seems like it's, the easy way to do it, and then we're increasing that way, and it would be such,
Some of
to me, better money spent if we took some of this red comment money and put it to after-school tutoring, because that would impact everybody. That would impact kids that, need assistance because they're failing classes, and kids that want extra help for more
Well, we had that
enrichment too.
discussion too, like, we know when kids come up from, we know which kids have been struggling as elementary students and
Right.
which kids have been struggling as middle schoolers. Right now, the high school doesn't have any intervention programs, so as freshmen, so do you need a full schedule? Do you need one? Do you get a period of like
Stud-
freshman success with
what?
support
Study
and
hall.
intervention?
Study hall.
So that they, where teachers like.
We
the
called it
freshman teachers
freshman
are doing
101.
now, Tracking students, checking in, doing grade checks, helping them if they're,
That's not
right,
Mustang
if they're-
period?
Mustang period, yes, but Mustang period's not probably long enough for
Yeah,
that.
it's so short. By the
Yeah.
time you get your book open and you get done to the first
It's
problem.
like, yeah, I mean, it's not, they're really attempting to do that with their freshman teachers, but it's not enough time to dig into your math or organize something where like, okay, I'm across the hall from the math teacher, I can help them with their English, maybe they'll help them with their math, and we trade some kids, cause we've got 45 minutes or a 50-minute period or something to do that. So kids do need support, for a lot of reasons, but, there's just pieces in the system that we can make better, and it would bring those costs down, and it would be better for kids.
Well, I think it's a good conversation. we're
Yeah.
having, definitely, and get it straightened out.
Mhm.
I will have to look into, because I truly don't know the answer. I keep saying those kinds of things, but I don't know if we can charge for red comment. I mean, I don't know, I'm saying I don't know what the guidelines, we'd have to have a policy about it. So, for example, there is this general rule of thumb, you have to know what's expected and what your graduation is and stuff when you start high school. So your handbook, your grade, how many credits you need, all of it has to be when you walk into your 9th grade year. You can't change the end game at the middle of the year. So I think if we were doing that, I think it would have to be for the 9th grade students. I don't think you could
Forward with.
moving forward and then each year thereafter. Cause there's this, kind of
Yeah.
changing the carrot in the middle of the stream. I don't think you can
Post, yeah.
moving the goalpost. You can't do it in the middle. So I think we could look into that. I just don't want to speak out loud that I know we can, or I know we can't. There's probably some guidance in that.
If you
Red
provide
comment
kids
grants.
with a challenge and the support, they will rise to the occasion. They have to have both.
But they have to have the expectation.
Yeah.
And their families have to know what's ahead of them. There's also this piece, and I hear you guys talk about it. And I'm gonna use myself. When my oldest went to high school, I was like, oh, he's a young adult. And come to find out, he needed me more as a freshman in high school than he needed me in 2nd grade, right? So I think there's also this idea, especially if it's your first child in high school, that you're kind of like, oh, they're on their way and they actually need you more to check the backpack and to make sure the homework's done.
Check, but get on to
Grades.
Skyward and check the parent access and see how they're doing. And
100%.
but they
That's
need that
exactly-
accountability the most that freshman year, because if they get all the leeway in the world. They're just gonna keep that trend the whole rest of the time.
They are still kids.
And we need teachers to update Skyward too.
Absolutely.
Because if we have 10, you're waiting on 10 assignments and they haven't been graded, and your kid's
Yep.
passing, and then like,
Next day, they're failing.
yeah, what's
Absolutely.
going on here? So I think it's, communication with teachers, with students, with families, with the school,
Would be
expectations.
Great conversation. We should have maybe Brian in on a study session and talk about some of those things. But
Mhm.
there are, and David, because David's been working really hard on the freshman success stuff.
So I'm gonna restate what I've heard so far. We kind of like this 307. I heard from Brian. I hate the red 700 number, but I think we need a budget for it all. I hear Jason saying I like this difference of the 307 number, knowing what potential carryover we have. I've heard talking about putting the carryover into, some of the carryover into a pot to get us started.
Well, I don't think it's so much the carryover from this year, but it's what we have in
In the line items.
in the fund balance that still keeps us at
Oh,
5%.
Oh, thank you very much for clarifying.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I mean, we got 280 grand roughly, 200
To
and
keep us
something.
at 5%, so we're good, but this difference instead of being 5.4 or 5.3, keep us at 5 and, okay.
And then we can start building that fund.
Do you hear that, Delise? I got some notes, but
Yes.
I'd like to see those building in district, the District 2 and the division budgets.
okay.
Have some held back, yeah. This,
Okay.
on the discretionary things. I mean, obviously your fixed costs are
Well,
fixed
I
costs,
think
but
Hannah brought up a great idea that I never heard of. We're
Yeah.
gonna take 10%. And if our enrollment continues and we continue to do well, it'll just be sitting there and you can have it back at the end of the year if all goes well.
Mhm.
yeah, that's a great idea.
Let's make some notes about that too, Delise.
Okay. I
So-
think that's a great idea.
Yeah, so for example, and I know it's not this number, but if the high school has 120,000, we're gonna keep 12, 10%, and then they'll get it back if we have a good year.
Yeah. I think that's a good idea. I think there was a time before where they were only getting 50% of their budget to begin with. And then depending on how the year went, Craig gave them the other half.
Yeah.
So it's not something that's new to them.
Yeah, 10 enough.
I mean, and we might look at it and say it has to be 20. I don't know. So
Well, in that
Delise,
case,
kind
yeah.
of tell the board then what is happening in July for you in budget and what our plan would be the first meeting in August.
Okay, so the OSPI forms basically are becoming available. The revenue form, the F-203, became available a couple weeks ago, and so I went to the ESD last week to get our revenue estimate and get help with that. So I'll have more solid numbers throughout this month and the beginning of July. And then we will also know what our grant amounts will be. So we'll know what CTE is with the carryover that he'll have. We'll know more of what Deanna's numbers will be also with a couple other of her grants. And then we'll also know where we're at for 23-24 expense wise. And if we're going to be able to carry over any of the funds into 24-25. So we'll have a much better idea towards the end of the month, and it'll all come together in July.
So I'm gonna ask you because our goal was to not have a study session in July. We planned for the second meeting in July. Do you think you would have a final enough budget that we would do a resolution from there, or do we have to wait till the first meeting in August?
Honestly, it's going to depend on the data entry in Skyward. And the situation with that, but I think that if I had the help that I needed, we could do that.
Okay, so what that means, so it's a resolution, right, Jason? that we accept the budget on?
Yeah, but we'd also have to have a,
Open public, it has to go in the newspaper and
yeah, like a 2-week,
hearing,
public,
public.
public